Hello! I wanted to show my progress on my goldwork project for my Ever After dress. It's not done just yet, but the process is the same for each of these segments. So to figure out the scale for the embroidery on the center front skirt portion of this dress, I actually went to IMDb to check Drew Barrymore's height, and she's 5'4", which is exciting because that's my height as well, so that makes figuring out the scale so much easier. And I drew out a rough draft of what my pattern piece looks like in the center front. So my pattern piece, excluding seam allowance, is 46 inches. So I just drew a scale version. I forgot to draw a little flower down here. I'll do it real quick. I counted 10 flowers on the front of her skirt, and the last two are stacked on top of each other, so really I'm trying to figure out the spacing between 9 flowers essentially. And so I took the measurement from here to here, which on my pattern piece was 46 inches, and I divided it by 10, and so I knew that my center points of each of these flowers would end up being about 5 inches. And so that's how I figured out the spacing of the center of each flower. And then I'll show what I did to get the actual pattern. So once I knew the distance between the flowers for my skirt pattern, I pulled up an image of the actual dress and I zoomed into the image until I found the center points of the flowers being at 5 inches. And then I took a piece of tissue paper and traced the actual dress. Just so I could, again, have a good sense of spacing. And I did just a rough drawing of the pattern to start with. And I even drew the little chain in between so I could have a sense of what the scale for that would be. And then the leaves here. And so that's how I started making my pattern. After I had gotten the pattern off of my computer, I actually drew it onto my pattern just to double check the scale and make sure that it was right, and I was happy with it. And then when I was happy with it, I transferred it onto this heavier paper so that I could transfer it onto my fabric. Now I pinned my pattern to my fabric. This is a silk organza from Dharma Trading, and then I used a heat-soluble pen that I got off Amazon, and I can share the link for these below. And I traced my pattern, which is a little hard to do one-handed, but I'll just do a little bit just so you get an idea of what it looks like. So when I'm done with this, done with all the sewing, I can use my steamer to get this color out. But these are handy little pens for marking. Once I got my pattern traced onto my fabric, it was time to decide what I was going to use as a base to puff up the goldwork embroidery, and traditionally felt is used, which I've done here. I had bought this trim to use as a base for the flowers, and I ended up just using this as a tracing pattern to cut out my felt for the flowers. And here I'll show what it looks like once they're stitched on. You can see I just used a whip stitch around the edges just to get it down. It doesn't have to be super perfect because the gold work is also going to hold this felt piece down. So this is what I've been using for my embroidery frame. It's a length of PVC pipe that I got from the hardware store in these connecting pieces. It's super easy to travel with because I can just pop off the legs real quick, and then all I have left is this rectangle. And I bought these little clamp pieces as well on Amazon, and I can share the link to those. So here's my fabric. Since this is a silk fabric, it's not super expensive from Dharma Trading, but it is, you know, more expensive than typical fabric, and I wanted to maximize the length of it, and so I drew my design really close to the edge, but there wasn't enough room to clamp it down, so I added this muslin strip of fabric so that I could have excess fabric to clamp down. And I also noticed that when I would clamp down on the silk, these corners would push on the fabric so much that it would mess with the warp and weft of it. So I grabbed an extra piece of the felt that I had left over to use as a buffer, and then that way I could pull on my fabric and get the tension that I wanted without wrecking the silk fabric. I've marked out a circle in the center, and I've got my bright check here, and I stitched the bright check down in this center circle first. This bright check has a looser coil, so I stitch around the outside and then bring the thread over and tack it down. So rather than stitching it through the center like a bead, I'm tacking it down in between the loosened coils. And I make sure to follow my circular line. Once I've got the middle circle done, I'll start working my way around the petals. I start with the bright check touching the inner circle, and I get the first tack down. And then I work my way around each of these petals, and I'll work around the petal, stop here and clip off my bright check, and then I'll start again here, and then stop here, and then I'll work my way around till I've got all of the petals outlined with the bright check. Okay, so now that I've outlined my flower piece with the bright check, I'm ready to fill it in with this smooth pearl. And I'll start in a corner and chevron my pieces. You can see on this previous one that I've done that the pieces chevron out from each other. So I'm going to be stitching these at a diagonal. So I'll start in a corner. And stitch my first piece on. And then I'll lay the rest, the next pieces next to that. And I like to kind of start somewhere in the middle and then work my way out and then come back and fill this part in. And here's a flower finished. To start off doing the leaves, I use this heat-soluble pen, and I mark out the inside detail. And this line I will follow along with the bright check, and I'll outline this shape with the bright check as well. And you can see here that the tips are a bit rounded, so I like to take my tweezers and I'll grab a couple of the coils and pull on them and pinch here to make it a little more pointy, like this. I'll do it on this one too. So I pull it this way and then pinch with my fingers. And then it gets more pointy. And now I'm ready to fill it in. I usually like to start in this middle piece right here, and then I'll work my way eventually to the outside. I start a bit away from the absolute point over here, so I can get the diagonal that I want. And I have the middle pieces working in a chevron pattern again away from the center line. And now that I have the center part done, I'm gonna start at this point here. I work my way around, and then I work back up this way and then come back around this way. And here it is finished. I hope this video helps other people with their own goldwork projects, and this is the first of many videos for this particular dress since it's so elaborate, so stay tuned. Feel free to like and subscribe for more updates, and thanks for watching!